Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda.
Hare Krishna, welcome to our channel Bhagavad-gita. Here it is, because here it is, the book Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My name is Latika, and we have come to the fourth chapter, Transcendental Knowledge, and we are learning so many new fascinating things, because spiritual life is not just the question of how to say, an intuitive feeling of something. It is there is so much knowledge available that we can connect to and utilize, because of course still we have to be there with our heart, but we also can get some instruction, direction and knowledge how things work. This text today I'm reading is from the chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, and then the text is number 13, and I will read the Sanskrit. Chaturvarnyang maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha tasya kartaram api mam vidhya kartaram avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me, Krishna speaking, and although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So there are quite some terms here that we may not be entirely familiar with. Modes of material nature, the four divisions of human society, and of course God in the middle of all of this. God is not an unfamiliar concept, but maybe the specifics of God are not that well known. Even within religions we find we're aiming to serve God, to please God, to follow His instructions and to love Him. But that's not always very much knowledge about Himself as a person, who He is, what He does, what He looks like, who He surrounds Himself with, and what life will be like when we come back into His kingdom. So the Bhagavad-gita gives us a little more information there, and especially when we continue on to the Srimad Bhagavatam, we actually get to know God as a person. But at least the concept of God as a person is amply given within the Bhagavad-gita. I will read the purport. The Lord is the creator of everything. Everything is born of Him, everything is sustained by Him, and everything after annihilation rests in Him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men technically called Brahmanas due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called the Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, and the Shudras or laborer class are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of His creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions, because He is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. Yes, so we start with the Lord is the creator of everything. This we can maybe not see it directly with our eyes, but it's quite a logical conclusion to see. That's also one of the definitions of God. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. This is from the Brahma Samhita, spoken by Lord Brahma, who is the oldest person in the universe, actually, according to the Vedic understanding. And he's saying here, Anadir Adir, He is the beginning of everything, but He has no beginning. Sarva Karana Karanam, He's the cause of all causes, but He has no cause. So some kind of logic, using some kind of logic, we can draw that conclusion that everything we see comes from somewhere. And what is the ultimate cause? What is the ultimate beginning of everything? That's where we find God. That's how to say, it's not a very personal definition of God, but it's a good working definition coming from the perspective, from being in this material world and seeing existence here. And the four divisions of the social order, that's also a little bit, maybe not so current, maybe not so modern, maybe not something we have seen. But these four classes, Krishna is not, the Vedas are not saying we have to have a very firm and fixed class system. Krishna speaks about this in other places where he says these four divisions are based on guna and karma, qualities and activities. So it's not that we see that in India, and the Vaishnavas in our tradition, and Prabhupada himself specifically, have been very critical toward this idea that you're born somewhere and then you're stuck there. That's not the point of a Varnashram society. Varnashram society, the whole point there is that we are born and we have different abilities, qualifications and needs. Some needs are of course universal. We all need to breathe air and eat food and have a social connection with family and friends and so on. And we need to avoid too much fear, because otherwise society becomes unbearable and life becomes unbearable. There has to be some level of protection there. And how we organize it, that we can look at our Western history. We have been through a few systems that's even recent, that we can practically speaking remember it, seeing it, this feudalism, and we have seen some attempts at socialism, communism, capitalism. I don't know if we can call it a system as such, but there is an idea, and these ideas are kind of based on these four classes as well, but without the complete understanding. So Krishna here is, of course, in this verse, he's not exactly explaining this system. He's just telling us how, even though he created the system, he's not part of it. But as devotees, it's very interesting to see that Krishna created the system and we don't have this system. And Prabhupada actually gave us that instruction, that we need to establish a Varnashram society, not in order to take over the world or just do things because God says so, but because any organization, any society needs an organization. And if we can see that Krishna gave us a system, we can assume it is the best system. So we want to learn that, but it's not so easy because it's a very sophisticated system with many aspects and not all that easily to understand. But when we say that we have the intellectual class, we have the class of teachers and priests, and that class today does not have the standing that it used to be. We used to have that the priests were kind of dictating to the others, and then the kings followed their orders, and then regular, the productive systems, which were largely agrarian, largely based on tilling the earth. That whole structure simply does not exist in our... I live in Sweden, I see that around me in the Western European countries. Still we eat, but the larger portion of people are not engaged in producing food for us, because society has changed, and the idea that we rebel against that, the whole idea that we have an intelligent class who is ruling society, because we don't understand, first of all, how that structure works, and also we have not seen the example of these people who are represented here. But a Brahmana is supposed to be very simple. He cannot have power as such. He cannot have riches as such. He has to live a very simple life, depending on alms, basically, and just giving knowledge, giving instructions. And there are so many levels of Brahmana. You can be a simple Brahmana in the village teaching some children, a handful of children, about reading and about God. or running a small temple, or even up to the level of, we see in the Vedic history, we used to have kings and emperors who were practically the emperors of the whole world. They had Brahmana advisors, and these advisors did not participate in the riches and in the power, because they had to stay pure and free from bias and free from strong ties of dependence to that ruler, because then their advice could be very clear-sighted, based in the Shastra, based in their own experience and intelligence, and such a class was very helpful. And we don't find them today. We don't find them because society is not organized in that way, but we do find people who have that inclination to studying, to intelligence, to sharing, to simplicity, who do not really have the motivation of wealth or power. And in a Vedic society, this class, in generally we think that that's the smallest class, because not very many people have that potential, that ability, and also not very many people are satisfied with such a simple life of just giving knowledge and spirituality to others without having a very strong material foundation for themselves. Kshatriyas, totally different situation. They would be the rulers of society, and in that way often they come in a genealogical line. I mean, it's not that you have to invent the wheel. If you come from such a family, you have that knowledge with you and you have those qualifications, you get very good training in how to run a country based on our actual needs, material needs and spiritual needs. And that means you listen to the Brahmanas. You don't go off on some inventing the wheel every 5 years. You have to invent a new system. And the Vaishyas, they are feeding society, and therefore they create some riches and wealth, and they also enjoy some riches and wealth, but at the same time they pay taxes to the state, they give charity to the Brahmanas, and they employ the Shudras. So basically everything is resting on the production of the Vaishyas. And today we see that we have largely done away with the Brahmanas. We are trying to do away with the Kshatriyas. So the main point that comes up is a point of economy. We are going forward to a year of election in Sweden, and everyone's saying, yes, work, money, economy. And the point is, Vaishyas cannot run a society because their motivation is not the highest. They may be very intelligent. You can run a very big company and make a lot of money, but you cannot immediately, transfer that experience onto running a country, because other principles apply. But because we have become disillusioned with our Brahmanas, with our Kshatriyas, and now we're trying, in socialism means you also do away with the Vaishyas, and it makes kind of sense, because they're not supposed to run the society. They're not supposed to look at everything through the glasses of is this productive? Can we gain some profit? Is this profitable? Because you can't run a country to be profitable. Like, you can't run a family to be profitable. It's not as if you're coming into bad times where your economy is failing. You can't fire your children. And similarly, a king cannot fire his citizen. So these people, they still exist, who have these natural tendencies and qualifications, but the structure that brings them together does not exist. And the Shudras, we say, the laborer class of men, which is not the whole truth. Basically, Shudra just means you are serving someone else. So everybody who's not running their own structure, like Brahmanas, supposed to be running schools and temples and research, and they are not supposed to be paid. Nowadays, of course, every teacher has to be paid, because they cannot rely on charity from the parents and from other people, because society is not structured in that way. So in that sense, the Brahminical principles are compromised, but because we don't know about these principles, that's not a discussion I want to have today. I just want to say they are there, but the structure is not there. So they can basically run their own structure. The Kshatriyas, they are the administrator of societies. They can run their own structures. Vaishyas, they are farmers or businessmen, and they also run their own structures. But all the rest of us, we may go to work. It doesn't just mean laborer class. It also means, in the state you also have secretaries, you have art, you have dentists, you have so many groups, and it doesn't mean you're less intelligent in that sense. It just means basically you're not part of the other three groups. So you're part of those who serve the system with their abilities. And so that's what Krishna says. And that's what Prabhupada says here, that these four divisions, in one sense, that's the difference between human life and animal life, because the rest, animals also have some structures, and they have to feed their families, and they have to protect themselves against the outside forces. And that's all right. We do that too. But as human beings, we are supposed to get a little further. We are supposed to also, within our structure and our society, there has to be room for spiritual advancement. And not only room for it, that has to be the actual direction of society. That has to be where we are going. But we're going at different speeds because we have different motivations and capabilities. The society has room for all of us, but a society that is not geared towards spiritual advancement, it's not really a human society, because it doesn't give us the opportunity to take advantage of that specific ability we have as human beings to realize spiritual matters. So Krishna is not part of the society. He is not a conditioned soul. The tendency of a particular man towards work is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life, according to the different modes of material nature, are described in the 18th chapter of this book. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmanas. Although Brahmanas, by quality, are supposed to know about Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth, most of them approach only the impersonal Brahman, manifestation of Lord Krishna. But a man who transcends the limited knowledge of a Brahmana and reaches the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, becomes a person in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, a Vaishnava. Krishna consciousness includes knowledge of all different plenary expansions of Krishna, namely Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, etc. And as Krishna is transcendental to this system of the four divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nation, or species. So the modes of material nature, we will come back to them, but they tinge everything in life. Our nature, the nature of food, the nature of activity. We will come back to that because it's a very big subject and we cannot really fit it into this verse as such. But the point is, if we have that direction, if the direction is about waking up our inert love of God, then those persons, the Brahmanas, they are in the technical sense in charge of spiritual knowledge, but until there is such a realization of Krishna consciousness, they are not able to give the full picture. And a person, although not being part of the Brahmana class, because being a Brahmana is actually a question of your material nature, your body, but being a Vaishnava, being a servant of God, having realization of the spiritual nature of yourself, the spiritual nature of God, this does not depend on your body. So therefore, a Vaishnava is not limited by the varnasrama society. Neither is he against the varnasrama society, because it's a very nice and practical way of running society, and we can all take different positions in society. But just as Krishna is not bound by this society, even the Vaishnavas, Krishna's servants, they're also not bound by this. So that's some kind of knowledge that I only touched lightly upon, and we will come back to it in the future. So yes, knowledge of God is not just some feeling of something that has to be there. It includes a lot of knowledge from all sorts of angles. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.